Look, I never imagined that at 63 years old, I would be living what I lived. There, that night, in my own bed, with my husband and my best friend, I looked at the ceiling and thought, my God, how did I get here? But before I tell you everything in the smallest details, let me introduce myself properly. My name is Helen, I'm 65 now, and I've been married for 42 years to Roger, who's 67. We met at a 4th of July barbecue when I was 21, and he was 23. It was love at first sight, you know? That thing where you look and feel butterflies in your stomach. We got married 2 years later and built a beautiful life together. We had 3 wonderful children who are now grown, married, and have their own kids. Our life was always good, peaceful. Roger worked his whole life as a mechanic, and I always took care of the house and the boys. We weren't rich, but we never lacked anything. After the kids left home about 5 years ago, it was just the 2 of us. And that's when things started to change. You know how it is, right? After so many years together, the routine gets kind of boring. Not that we didn't love each other anymore, quite the opposite. But all that fire from the beginning had cooled down a long time ago. We got along well, talked, laughed together. But in bed, well, it was always the same thing. Once a week, on the same day, the same way. I didn't mind much. I thought it was normal for our age. But Roger started acting different. He'd watch certain shows on TV, read magazines, and started poking me with crazy ideas. At first, they were simple things. What if we tried doing it differently? What if we bought some different things? I thought it was funny. I even went along with some of his new ideas. But over time, his ideas got bolder and bolder. Until one day, about 2 years ago, he came to me with a proposal I never, ever imagined hearing from my husband. We were sitting on the couch watching our show when he turned off the TV and said, "Helen, we need to talk about something serious." My heart sank. I thought he was going to tell me he had a serious illness or something. But no, what he said was much more shocking. "Helen, I want to try something different with you. I've always wanted to experience a threesome." I looked at his face thinking it was a joke, but he was serious. People, I was speechless. 40 years of marriage and my husband comes to tell me something like that? I didn't know whether to laugh, cry, or hit him with my slipper. "Roger, have you completely lost your mind? A threesome? With who? What do you mean?" He got all embarrassed, but continued, "I don't know. It could be with someone we know, someone we trust." I got up from the couch and went to the kitchen. I needed to process all that. My husband wanting to share the bed with another person? And me? What was I in this story? I spent days barely talking to him, but he didn't give up. Every time he'd come back with that talk, trying to convince me it would be good for both of us, that it would renew our marriage. And look, those of you listening to me now, I know many of you must be thinking, this woman is crazy to accept something like that. But let me tell you something I learned in these 65 years of life. You never know what you'll do until you're in the situation. And you know what else? This channel has a goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers, and each of your subscriptions represents tremendous support for me to continue sharing these stories that nobody has the courage to tell. It's a simple gesture, but it means so much, truly. So subscribe and come with me on this journey. After that conversation, things got weird between me and Roger. We kept living together, doing our daily things, but there was an elephant in the room nobody wanted to talk about. Every time we went to bed, I kept thinking, is he thinking about that? When he looks at me, is he imagining someone else there? I started noticing everything differently. When we'd go to the grocery store and he'd greet a neighbor lady, I'd think, is she the one he wants? When we'd go to church and he'd say good morning to the women, I'd analyze each one. It was hell in my head, people. Then one day, I was at my best friend's house, Marcia. We've known each other since childhood, grew up together in the same neighborhood. She was my maid of honor, and I was hers. She became a widow about 3 years ago and has lived alone since then. We've always been very close, the kind of friends who tell each other everything, no secrets. I was having coffee with her when I couldn't take it anymore and vented. Marcia, Roger asked me something I don't even know how to tell you. She put down her cup and looked at me with that worried face. What? Did he cheat on you? I laughed nervously. No, worse. He wants us to have a threesome. Marcia's jaw dropped. She was silent for a few seconds and then started laughing. Laughing hard. I can't believe Roger, that serious man, asked you that. I ended up laughing at the whole situation too, because it was kind of absurd. But then she got serious and asked, "And you? What do you think about it?" I sighed deeply. I don't know, Marcia. On one hand, I think it's crazy. We're already at that age, we're past the phase of these experiments. But on the other hand, you know how it is. After so many years doing the same thing all the time, there's a part of me that's curious. We spent the whole afternoon talking about it. Marcia asked me several questions I hadn't asked myself yet. But do you feel desire for women? I answered that I'd never thought about it. What if you try it and don't like it? I said, then we'd never do it again. What if you discover you like it and he gets jealous? That one got me because I hadn't thought about it. And look, since we're talking so openly here, tell me something. Where are you watching me from right now? What time is it in your city? Comment down below. I love knowing where you all are. And take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel to see more real-life stories like this. Stories from people like us, who've lived and have a lot to share. When I got home that day, Roger noticed I was different. Did you talk to Marcia? He asked. How did he know? You become transparent when you talk to her. You always come home lighter. He knew me too well. I sat on the couch next to him and said, Roger, let's talk about this properly. Explain to me what's going through your head. Why do you want this? He took a deep breath and started talking. He said it wasn't because he didn't love me, quite the opposite. He said he loved me so much and wanted to experience new things with me before we got too old. Helen, what do we have? Another 20, 25 years if God willing? I don't want to get to the end of life and regret not having lived more. That touched me, you know, because it was true. We don't know how much time we have. My mom died at 70, my dad at 68. We're already in the home stretch and I didn't want to regret anything either. But Roger, who would it be with? Do you have someone in mind? He got embarrassed. Actually, I always thought that if it was going to be with someone, it had to be with someone very trustworthy. Someone who wouldn't judge us, who would keep the secret. I thought about Marcia. Good Lord. My husband had thought about my best friend. My first reaction was shock. Marcia? Why Marcia? She's beautiful, intelligent, you two get along well, she's alone. Roger continued explaining. And you know what's worse? Or better? I don't know. When he said her name, something inside me stirred. I spent the following days unable to get that out of my head. Marcia, my childhood friend, the woman who knew all my secrets, who was there for me in the best and worst moments of my life. What would that be like? I looked at her differently now. I went back to her house a week later. I needed to talk more about it, but this time with a different perspective. When I arrived, she was tending her garden. Hi, friend. What a surprise. I thought you only came on Fridays. I gave a kind of embarrassed smile. It's just that I need to talk to you about something. We went inside. She made fresh coffee and we sat on her porch. Marcia, remember that conversation we had about Roger's request? She nodded. So, he said something that left me even more confused. I took a deep breath before continuing. He said that if it was going to be with someone, he thought of you. Marcia's face turned red as a beet. What do you mean, me? Helen, he said that? My God! She got up and started pacing back and forth. Calm down, Marcia. I know it's shocking, but... She interrupted me. Shocking? It's surreal. What did you tell him? I told her I hadn't said anything yet, that I had come to talk to her first. Because look, Marcia, as crazy as it sounds, I trust you. If it was going to be with someone, I'd rather it be with you than with a stranger. She sat down again and looked at me. Helen, are you serious? Are you really considering this? You know that moment when you have to be honest with yourself? That moment when you stop pretending and admit what you really feel? Well, that's what happened there. Marcia, I'm 63 years old. I've spent my whole life being the proper Helen, the dedicated wife, the exemplary mother. I've never done anything out of the ordinary. And you know what? I'm curious. I want to know what it's like. And if it's going to be with someone, let it be with you. Now tell me something, and be honest. Do you think I'm right or wrong in wanting to try this? Is there an age limit for these things, or does everyone live the way they want? Comment what you think, because I'm curious to know if you support me or if you think I've gone completely crazy. Marcia stared at me for what seemed like an eternity. Then she said something that surprised me. Helen, I'm going to be honest with you. I've thought about it too. What? After I became a widow, I thought a lot about sexuality, about living, about experiencing things I never had the courage to. And look, I've always thought you and Roger were a beautiful couple. My heart raced when she said that. There was something there I wasn't expecting, a different complicity, a connection that went beyond friendship. So you'd be up for it? I asked, still not believing the direction the conversation was taking. She gave a kind of shy smile. Look, I'm not going to lie to you. The idea scares me, but it also makes me curious. But it has to be the right way, you know? With respect, with affection. It can't just be a mechanical thing. There has to be feeling involved. I completely agreed. And there have to be rules too. We need to establish boundaries. We spent hours talking about it that day. We talked about what each of us felt, about fears, about expectations. We decided that if we were going to do it, it had to be something planned, discussed, where everyone was comfortable. It wouldn't be an impulsive thing. When I got home, Roger noticed something had changed. Did you talk to her? I sat next to him and took his hand. I did, and she didn't say no. His eyes widened. Really? And you? What did you decide? I looked right into his eyes and said, Roger, if we're going to do this, there have to be clear rules. No jealousy afterward, no comparisons, no secrets. And it has to be just once for us to try it and see what it's like. Deal? He nodded, emotional. Deal. I love you, Helen. You know that, right? I knew. And that was exactly why I was willing to do it, because after 40 years together, I wanted to give him what he so desired. And in the process, discover things about myself that I'd never explored. The following days were a mix of nervousness and excitement. We scheduled it for the following Friday. It was the perfect night. The kids wouldn't be visiting. We had no commitments on Saturday. We'd have all the peace in the world. Marcia and I talked a few days beforehand to arrange everything. She'd come for dinner, we'd have some wine, talk a lot to get everyone relaxed. And then we'd see what happened naturally. I was so nervous I felt like a teenager on her first date. On Thursday, I went to the salon to get my hair done. The manicurist noticed I was different. Miss Helen, you have a different sparkle in your eyes. Did something good happen? I laughed and said I was just happy because I was having dinner with a friend. If she only knew what was really going to happen. I bought new clothes, new lingerie, new perfume. Roger also got all dressed up, went to the barber, bought clothes. He was all excited, but I also noticed he was nervous. Helen, what if it goes wrong? What if it ruins everything between us? I held his hand. It won't ruin anything. We've loved each other for 40 years. That won't change because of one night. And look, I noticed something. There are a lot of people here watching me, but who haven't subscribed to the channel yet. If you like these real stories, if you want to keep following along, then subscribe now as a form of support. Or if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe too. It's quick, and it helps the channel grow so much. On Friday, I woke up with butterflies in my stomach. I spent the day cleaning the house, preparing dinner. I made a fancy lasagna, the kind everyone loves, a green salad, and bought a good red wine. I set the table with a nice tablecloth, candles, all very romantic. At 7 at night, the doorbell rang. It was Marcia. She looked beautiful, wearing a blue dress that brought out her eyes, her hair loose on her shoulders. Roger opened the door and greeted her with a kiss on the cheek. I noticed tension in the air, but good tension, you know? That anticipation of something new. We started with dinner. We talked about normal things first: family, grandkids, neighborhood news. The wine helped us relax. By the second glass, we were already laughing at silly things, remembering old stories. It was good to see Roger and Marcia getting along, talking, laughing together. After dinner, we went to the couch. Marcia sat in the middle between me and Roger. We put on some soft music and kept talking. That's when Roger brought up the subject. So, is everyone comfortable with this? Marcia and I looked at each other. There was nervousness there, but there was also desire. I am, I said. Me too, said Marcia. Roger smiled and held her hand. I held the other hand. And that's how, little by little, things started to happen. Nothing was forced, nothing mechanical. It was natural, it was affectionate, it was intense. I won't go into too many intimate details here, because that's something private between the three of us. But I'll tell you one thing. It was an experience that completely changed my view of myself, of my body, of what I was capable of feeling. I discovered things about myself at 63 that I never imagined existed. Marcia was incredible, delicate, respectful. Roger was fulfilled, but at the same time worried about making everyone feel good. And me? I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. It was liberating, you know? Like I had allowed myself to be a version of myself that had always existed, but that I'd never let show. When Saturday morning came, I woke up with Marcia on one side and Roger on the other. For a moment, I thought it had been a dream. But it wasn't. It had really happened. I had really done that. And you know what I felt? Peace. Tremendous peace. I got up slowly, so as not to wake anyone, and went to make coffee. While the water was boiling, I kept thinking about everything that had happened. Should I feel guilty? Ashamed? But I didn't feel any of that. I felt light, renewed, like I'd taken a huge weight off my shoulders. Marcia appeared in the kitchen a few minutes later, with messy hair and one of my robes on. "Good morning," she said quietly. "Good morning," I replied. We looked at each other and started laughing. That nervous laugh of people who don't quite know what to say. "So, how are you?" she asked. "I'm good, really good actually. And you?" She smiled. "Me too. It was different from what I imagined. It was better." I agreed. Roger appeared soon after, also in a robe, and hugged both of us from behind. "My favorite girls," he said, and we laughed together. We had coffee talking about everything. About how it had been, about how we felt, about what would happen now. We decided right there that it had been a unique and special experience, but that it didn't need to be repeated. It had been perfect the way it was, and repeating it could ruin the magic. And you know what else? If you liked this story, if it touched you somehow, share it with your friends. Sometimes we need to hear real stories from real people to realize that life has much more to offer than we imagine, no matter how old we are. So share it, and let's spread these stories together. Marcia left in the mid-afternoon. We hugged tight, the way only true friends hug. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" I asked. "For trusting me. For including me in something so special between you two." I smiled. "Thank you for agreeing to be part of it." After she left, Roger and I sat on the couch talking. "Helen, I love you more than anything in this life. You know that, right?" I knew. And you know this doesn't change anything between us, right? I knew that too. What had happened hadn't diminished our love, quite the opposite. It had brought us closer, shown us that after 40 years we were still capable of surprising each other. In the following days, we returned to our normal routine. But there was something different in the air, a new complicity, a freedom that didn't exist before. It was like that experience had broken some invisible barriers that existed between us. Marcia continued being my best friend, as she'd always been. We'd have lunch together, talk, laugh at the same things. But now there was an extra layer of intimacy between us. Not in the physical sense, but in the sense that we shared a special secret, an experience that had been transformative for both of us. One day, about 2 weeks later, we were having coffee at her house when she said, "You know, Helen, I was thinking about going to therapy." I was startled. "Because of that?" She laughed. "No, quite the opposite. Because of that, I realized I have much more to explore about myself. I spent my whole life being the proper Marcia, the dedicated wife, and then the suffering widow. I want to discover who I am beyond all that." That touched me deeply, because it had been exactly what I'd felt too. That experience hadn't just been about sex. It had been about liberation, about self-discovery, about breaking the invisible chains that society puts on us, especially on women, especially on older women. Marcia, you know what else? We spend our lives thinking we have to be only one way, that after a certain age it's over. You can't experiment anymore. You can't have fun anymore. You can't live intensely anymore. And that's a lie. We can be whoever we want to be, at any age. She agreed, and we toasted with our coffee, laughing at the whole situation. Right there, in that moment, I realized that what had happened wasn't just about fulfilling my husband's fantasy. It was about me too, about allowing myself to live, experience, feel without guilt. But not everything was so simple, people. After a few weeks, I started noticing some strange things. Roger was different. It wasn't something obvious, but I'd known that man for over 40 years. I knew when something was wrong. He'd spend more time on his phone, always giggling when he got a message. When I'd ask who it was, he'd say it was people from work or friends. But I wasn't stupid. I knew that look, that way of hiding the screen when I got close. One day, I couldn't take it and confronted him. "Roger, what's going on? You're acting strange." He pretended it was nothing, said I was imagining things. But I insisted. "Roger, after everything we've been through, are you going to start having secrets from me now?" He sighed deeply and confessed, "It's just, that night really affected me, Helen. And now I keep thinking, couldn't we do it again? Couldn't it be more times?" My heart sank. What had been special precisely because it was unique, he wanted to turn into a routine. "Roger, we agreed it would be just once. Precisely so we wouldn't ruin the magic, remember?" He got kind of sulky. "But it was so good, Helen, and Marcia enjoyed it too, I know she did." I took a deep breath. It's not about enjoying it or not. It's about keeping it special. If it becomes routine, it loses its meaning. He didn't like my answer. He was kind of cold toward me for a few days, distant. And that's when I started suspecting something worse. Could he be talking to Marcia behind my back? Could they be meeting without me knowing? I called Marcia and arranged to go to her house. When I arrived, she was tending some plants. "Hi, friend. What a nice surprise." I didn't have the face for beating around the bush. "Marcia, has Roger been talking to you?" She got embarrassed. "Ah, he sent some messages, yes." There, confirmed. My husband was hitting on my best friend. "And what did he say?" She hesitated before answering. He asked if I didn't want to do it again, said it had been really good and that we could do it again. I felt my blood boil. "And you? What did you say?" I said no, Helen. I said it had been special precisely because it was unique and that I wasn't going to ruin our friendship because of that. I also said he had to respect you and respect what we'd agreed on. I breathed relieved. At least Marcia had sense. But that got me thinking. Had it been a mistake to do that? Had I opened a Pandora's box I couldn't close anymore? Roger had tasted something new and now wanted more. And me? I didn't want more. For me, it had been perfect the way it was. I went home determined to have a serious conversation with him. When I arrived, he was watching TV. I turned off the television and sat in front of him. Roger, we need to talk seriously now. He already knew what it was about from my tone of voice. Helen, I interrupted. No. Now you're going to listen to me. We did that because you asked, because you wanted to experiment, because you said it would be good for our marriage. I agreed, even though I was scared, even though I was insecure, because I love you and wanted to make you happy. I continued. But the deal was it would be just once. And now you're going after Marcia, wanting to repeat it, wanting to turn that into something it was never supposed to be. That's not fair to me, it's not fair to her, and it's not fair to you either. He hung his head, embarrassed. Sorry, Helen. You're right. I got carried away. I thought it would be good to do it again. But I understand what you're saying. I took his hand. Roger, we can have a good and active sex life without needing other people. That was special, but just the two of us are special too. Don't forget that. He hugged me tight and apologized several times. And right there I realized something important. Sometimes we fulfill a fantasy, and it's not exactly what we imagined. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse, sometimes it's different. But the important thing is that afterward, we need to know how to return to reality and value what we already have. In the following months, things gradually returned to normal. Roger understood that it had been unique and special and didn't insist on the subject anymore. But I noticed he had become different in other ways. He was more affectionate with me, more attentive, more present. We started doing things together that we hadn't done in years. Started going out more, going to the movies, dining out. It was like that experience had awakened in him, not just physical desire, but also the desire to enjoy life with me. And I liked that. With Marcia, our friendship became even stronger. We had shared something very intimate, very special, and that created a bond that was different from everything. It wasn't physical attraction. It was a deep connection of souls that had allowed themselves to be vulnerable together. One day, I was talking with my daughters at Sunday lunch. They noticed I was different. Mom, you have a different energy. Did something happen? I laughed and said I was just happy, enjoying life. Obviously, I wasn't going to tell them what had happened. Some secrets are ours forever. But that made me think about how much we hide from our family, from society. We have to follow a pattern, be the exemplary mother, the proper wife, the dedicated grandmother. And if we step out of that pattern, we're judged, criticized, condemned. Especially us women, especially us older women. How many women my age have desires, fantasies, wishes they never fulfill for fear of judgment? How many repress themselves their whole lives because they think that's not something for a woman my age to do? And why not? Who defined these rules? I started noticing this around me. I met a 70-year-old neighbor who told me in secret that she'd started dating a 50-year-old man. She was in love, happy, but hiding it from everyone because she was afraid of what people would say. Miss Helen, my children would die of embarrassment if they knew. And that made me sad. Why do we have to hide our happiness? Why can't we live fully at any age? These questions started bothering me more and more. I talked to Marcia about it. She'd noticed these things too. Helen, you know what I think? Society doesn't want older women to be sexual, to be desiring, to be active. They want us to just be the sweet grandma who bakes cookies and takes care of grandkids. She was right. And that was revolting. Why can a 60, 70-year-old man date, get married, have an active sex life, and everyone thinks it's normal, but if a woman the same age does the same thing, It's a scandal? Why is there this difference? These reflections led me to make changes in my life. I started dressing differently, with more colorful clothes, bolder ones, started coloring my hair differently, started doing things I always wanted to do but never had. I enrolled in a dance class. Imagine, at 64, me learning to dance salsa. My kids thought it was strange at first, but then got used to it. Roger loved it, even started taking classes with me. And you know what else? I realized that experience with Marcia hadn't just been about sex. It had been about liberation, about breaking chains, about allowing myself to be whoever I wanted to be, without fear, without guilt, without shame. One day, a friend from church came to talk to me. She'd noticed I was different and wanted to know the secret. "Helen, you look 20 years younger. What are you doing?" I smiled. "I'm living, Mary, that's all. I'm living." She looked at me with envy. "I wish I had your courage. I want to do so many things, but I'm afraid of what people will say." I held her hand. "Mary, we only have one life, and it goes by too fast. Don't let fear and other people's judgment stop you from being happy." That conversation made me realize how much my experience had transformed me. It wasn't about the threesome anymore, about that specific night. It was about having discovered that I could be free, that I could make choices, that I could live intensely regardless of my age. But not everything was roses, people. There was a moment, about 6 months after that night, when things almost fell apart completely. I was at the grocery store when I ran into an acquaintance, Mrs. Teresa. She's one of those full-time gossips, you know? Always knows everything about everyone. "Hi, Helen. Wow, you look different. Has anyone told you that?" I gave a polite smile. "Yes, they have, Mrs. Teresa." She came closer and said quietly, "Look, I don't know if it's true, but people are saying some things about you, about Roger and Marcia." My heart stopped. What? How could anyone know? We'd been so careful, so discreet. "What are they saying?" I asked, trying to stay calm. She gave that malicious little laugh. "Oh, you know how people are, right? Gossip comes and goes. They say you three. Well, you understand." I left the store with shaky legs. How had someone found out? Who had told? I got home desperate and called Roger. "We need to talk. Urgent." I also called Marcia. "Come here now." When they both arrived, I told them what had happened. Roger went pale. "But how? We didn't tell anyone." Marcia was also scared. "I didn't talk to anyone either, I swear." We spent hours trying to figure out how that gossip had started. Until Roger remembered. That day, Marcia came for dinner here. Mrs. Benedict, the neighbor, stopped me the next day and asked some strange questions. She asked if Marcia had stayed late, if she'd slept over. There it was. The neighbor had noticed that Marcia had only left in the middle of Saturday afternoon, and in her mind, something suspicious had happened. And being the gossip she was, she'd spread it to half the world. The situation was delicate. If that reached our kids, it would be a disaster. If it reached the church, it would be even worse. We needed to do something. But what? It was Marcia who had the idea. We need to give people a plausible explanation, something that makes sense but doesn't reveal the truth. We thought together and decided the story would be that Marcia had felt sick during dinner, got nauseous, and that's why she slept over. Simple, plausible, nothing major. Roger went to talk to the neighbor. "Mrs. Benedict, I heard you're spreading some things about that day Marcia had dinner here. Just so you know the truth, she got sick during dinner, felt nauseous, and since we weren't going to let her go home alone in that condition, she slept here." That was it. The neighbor got embarrassed, but bought the story. The gossip gradually lost strength, but the damage had already been done. Some looked at us differently, with suspicion, and that hurt. There was one day I ran into the priest from church. He pulled me aside. "Helen, there are some comments about you going around. You know about this?" I pretended I didn't understand. "What kind of comments, Father?" He looked into my eyes. "You're a married woman, Helen. You have to be careful about appearances." That deeply revolted me. He didn't even know what he was talking about, but was already judging me. "Father, with all due respect, my personal life is not the church's business or anyone else's. My husband and I are fine, our family is fine, and that's what matters." The priest didn't like my answer, but I didn't care. That episode showed me how hypocritical people are. Everyone wants to talk about other people's lives, judge, condemn, but nobody looks at their own life. That night, Roger, Marcia, and I talked about all of this. "Was it worth it?" asked Marcia. I looked at her and Roger. Yes, it was. We did what we wanted, lived what we wanted to live, and we don't owe anyone an explanation. Let them say what they want. But inside, I confess it hurt. It hurt to realize that even at 64, I still had to worry about other people's judgment. It hurt to realize that society still doesn't accept that women our age have desires, wishes, lives of their own. After that whole episode, things calmed down. The gossip lost strength over time, like all gossip. People always find something new to talk about, and soon another scandal appeared in the neighborhood that took the focus off us. But that changed something in me. I realized that no matter what you do, there will always be someone to judge, to criticize, to speak badly. So the best thing is to do what makes you happy, and that's it. Because in the end, it's your life, not theirs. I talked a lot with Roger about this. "Do you regret it?" he asked me one day. I thought a lot before answering. I regret the gossip, the judgment, having to explain. But I don't regret the experience itself. That was ours, it was special, and nobody can take that away from us. He agreed. And you know what else? That experience, with all its ramifications, brought us even closer. We started talking about things we'd never talked about before, about desires, fears, dreams, fantasies. We opened up to each other in a way we'd never done in 40 years of marriage. Marcia changed too. She became more confident, more sure of herself, started going out more, dressing up more, living more. She even met a man a few months later, started dating, and I was happy for her because she deserved to be happy. One day, she came to talk to me. "Helen, I wanted to thank you. That experience changed my life in a way you can't even imagine. I spent 3 years in mourning after my husband died, thinking my life was over, and that night showed me it wasn't, that I was still alive, that I still had a lot to live for." That touched me deeply, because it had been exactly what I'd felt too. It wasn't about the sex itself, it was about allowing yourself to live, feel, experiment. It was about breaking the barriers we ourselves put in our lives. The months went by and life returned to normal. But a different normal, you know? A normal where Roger and I were closer, more complicit. A normal where I allowed myself to be whoever I wanted to be, without fear, without guilt. There was one day my oldest daughter came to have lunch with me. In the middle of the conversation, she said, "Mom, what happened to you? You're so different, so alive." I smiled. "Honey, I just realized there's no point living in fear of what others will think. Life goes by too fast for that." She looked at me with those eyes full of admiration. "I want to be like you when I grow up, Mom. You're brave." That filled me with pride, because it was true, I had been brave. I'd allowed myself to live something I wanted, even with fear, even knowing the risks. And you know what I learned from all this? I learned that age is just a number. I learned that it's never too late to know yourself better, to try new things, to live intensely. I learned that other people's judgment can't be bigger than our own happiness. There's a phrase I really like that sums up everything I lived. You have 2 lives, and the second one begins when you realize you only have one. That's exactly what happened to me. At 63, I realized I only had one life and that I had to live it the way I wanted. Today, when I look back, I don't regret anything. Of course, there were difficult moments, moments of judgment, moments of doubt, but there were also moments of discovery, of liberation, of intense happiness. And most importantly, my marriage didn't end, quite the opposite. Roger and I are more united than ever. We respect each other, love each other, desire each other. And that experience, far from separating us, brought us together in a way I never imagined possible. Marcia continues being my best friend, that person I can tell everything to, who understands me, who supports me. And we have a special secret that nobody else knows, a memory that's only ours. I also learned that everyone lives life their own way. I'm not here saying everyone should do what I did. Every couple has their dynamics, their limits, their wishes. The important thing is to respect that and not judge. Today, 2 years after that night, I can say I'm a completely different person. Not because of what we did specifically, but because of what it represented. The courage to live, to choose, to be free. I continue being Helen, Roger's wife, mother of 3, grandmother of 5. I continue going to church, taking care of the house, having lunch with friends. But now I have an extra layer. I have the Helen who allows herself to live, who's not afraid to experiment, who doesn't let herself be imprisoned by other people's judgment. Roger changed too. He's more affectionate, more present, more aware of how lucky he is to have a wife who loves and respects him enough to have fulfilled that dream of his. And he also learned, not everything we dream needs to be repeated. Sometimes, once is enough to keep forever as a special memory. Marcia is happy in her relationship. We see each other every week, talk about everything, laugh about life's things. And that night was never brought up again between us. It doesn't need to be. It's kept in each of our hearts as something sacred, something that transformed us. There was a moment, a few months ago, when I was sitting on the porch watching the sunset. Roger came and sat next to me. "What are you thinking about?" he asked. "I'm thinking about how funny life is. We think we know everything, that we've lived everything, and suddenly something appears that changes everything." He took my hand. "Helen, thank you. For everything. For agreeing, for trusting, for living that with me. But mainly, thank you for being who you are." I looked into his eyes, those same eyes I fell in love with over 40 years ago. "I'm the one who thanks you. For making me leave my comfort zone. For showing me I still had a lot to discover about myself." We stayed there, holding hands, watching the sun set. And I thought, this is it. This is what matters. It's not what others think. It's not the judgment. It's not the gossip. It's this moment here of true connection with those we love. Today, whenever I meet a woman my age who seems trapped, who seems to have given up on living, I want to say, don't give up. No matter how old you are, you can still live intensely. You can try new things. You can surprise yourself. Of course, it doesn't have to be the way I did it. It can be learning something new, traveling to a different place, starting a hobby, making new friends. The important thing is not to let yourself be imprisoned by the idea that you're past that age or that's not for me, because none of that is true. I was 63 when I lived that experience. 63, an age when many people think everything's over. But for me, it was the beginning of a new life. A life where I allow myself to be who I want to be, do what I want to do, live how I want to live. And you know what else? I realized that true respect comes when we respect ourselves first. When we respect our desires, our wishes, our limits. When we do that, others respect us too. And if they don't, that's their problem, not ours. My children admire me today, even without knowing everything. They see a mother who's living fully, who's happy, who's enjoying every day. And that's the best example I can give them and my grandchildren, that life is worth living at any age. So what did you think? Was it too shocking? Was it inspiring? Do you understand me, or do you think I went too far? Leave your thoughts in the comments, what you felt, what you thought, your reflections on all this. I love reading each one of your comments. And if you like this video, if this story touched you somehow, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to our channel. There are many other real stories here, stories from people like us, who've lived and have a lot to share. I'm leaving another video suggestion on the side for you to watch. I'm sure you'll like it too. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying here with me until the end, listening to this story that wasn't easy to tell, but that needed to be shared. Until the next video, and remember, live without fear, live without guilt, live with intensity. A kiss on your heart.